Hi and welcome to this brand new episode of Horror Talker. If you find these stories thrilling, do subscribe to our channel Horror Talker. And share it with your friends and family. Let's start with some exclusive stories which you won't believe actually happened. It was one of those nights when the world seemed to belong solely to me and the endless stretch of highway that cut through the American heartland. The clock on my dashboard read well past midnight, and fatigue weighed heavily on my shoulders. But there was still a long way to go, and I was determined to reach my destination. As the headlights of my car pierced the darkness, I spotted a sign up ahead, announcing the presence of a town that had never appeared on any map I'd seen before. "Welcome to Ashen Hollow," it read, but there was something peculiar about it. The letters seemed faded, as though they hadn't been touched by human hands in years. Curiosity piqued, I turned off the highway and onto a winding road that led deeper into this forgotten town. The streetlights lining the main street flickered sporadically, casting eerie shadows that danced in the corners of my vision. It was as though Ashen Hollow itself was reluctant to reveal its secrets. The buildings that lined the main street were relics of another era, their facades worn by time and neglect. The windows were boarded up, and the doors were sealed shut with heavy chains and padlocks. It was a ghost town frozen in time, a place that had been abandoned long ago. I pulled up to a gas station on the edge of town, hoping to refuel and maybe grab a cup of coffee to shake off the weariness that clung to me. But as I stepped out of my car and approached the pumps, an unsettling feeling washed over me. The gas station was eerily empty, devoid of any signs of life. I checked the convenience store attached to the station, but the shelves were bare, the cash registers empty. It was as though the town had been abandoned in the middle of business as usual, as if the residents had simply vanished into thin air. Unease settled in the pit of my stomach as I walked back to my car, the engine idling uneasily. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that unseen eyes were tracking my every move. I scanned the desolate streets, but there was no one in sight. Determined to unravel the mystery of Ashen Hollow, I continued to explore the town, each step leading me deeper into its unsettling past. I passed by homes that were locked up tight, their curtains drawn, as if their occupants had left in a hurry. Abandoned cars sat in driveways, covered in layers of dust and neglect. As I ventured further into the town, I began to notice unsettling details about its history. Faded murals on the sides of buildings depicted scenes of violence and despair, and newspaper clippings that littered the streets hinted at a dark and tragic past. My heart raced as I scanned the dimly lit interior of my car, the soft glow of the dashboard casting an eerie pallor on my face. One headline on the car's infotainment screen caught my attention: "Mass Disappearance Baffles Ashen Hollow." My fingers trembled as I tapped on the screen to read the article, my curiosity mingled with a growing sense of dread. The article detailed the sudden and inexplicable vanishing of the town's residents, leaving behind only their personal belongings and a sense of eerie emptiness that hung over Ashen Hollow like a shroud. No explanation had ever been found, no clues or leads to follow. The town had become a place of urban legend, whispered about in hushed tones by those who dared to speak of it at all. My mind raced, and a chill ran down my spine as I realized the uncanny parallel between the article's description and my current predicament. The highway, too, had a sense of eerie emptiness about it, as though the very essence of life had been sucked from its asphalt veins. My exploration led me to an old library, its doors standing ajar as if inviting me inside. The shelves were lined with dusty books and tattered manuscripts, all dedicated to the history of Ashen Hollow. I began to piece together the fragments of the town's past, each revelation more chilling than the last. Ashen Hollow had once been a thriving community, known for its close-knit residents and its idyllic charm. But a darkness had descended upon the town, a darkness that had torn families apart and driven people to madness. It was said that the town had become cursed, that something malevolent had taken hold of its soul. As I delved deeper into the town's history, I couldn't help but feel that I was retracing the steps of those who had vanished before me. The sensation of being watched grew stronger, as if the town itself resented my presence and sought to drive me away. I had to know the truth, no matter how unsettling it might be. I followed the trail of clues to a decaying mansion at the edge of town, its once grand facade now a crumbling testament to its former glory. It was here that I hoped to find answers, to uncover the secrets that Ashen Hollow had hidden for so long. As I entered the mansion, a chill ran down my spine, and I couldn't escape the feeling that I was not alone. The air was heavy with a malevolent presence, and the rooms were filled with the echoes of whispered conversations that seemed to come from nowhere. I climbed the creaking staircase to the second floor, my heart pounding with anticipation and fear. The hallways were lined with portraits of former residents, their eyes following me as I passed. Each face seemed to wear a mask of torment, a reflection of the darkness that had consumed Ashen Hollow. In the final room at the end of the hallway, I discovered a diary that belonged to the mansion's former owner, a man named Samuel Hawthorne. His words revealed a descent into madness, a descent fueled by an unspeakable evil that had taken root in the town. Hawthorne had conducted dark experiments in the basement of the mansion, experiments that sought to unlock the secrets of the afterlife. It was a reckless pursuit of power that had unleashed a malevolent force, a force that had driven the town's residents to madness and ultimately led to their mass disappearance. I knew then that I had to leave Ashen Hollow, that the town's dark history was a weight too heavy to bear. But as I made my way back to my car, I couldn't escape the feeling that the eyes of the town were upon me, that Ashen Hollow resented my intrusion and sought to keep its secrets hidden. I sped away from the town, the eerie streets disappearing in my rearview mirror. The mysteries of Ashen Hollow would remain unsolved, its secrets buried in the past. But the feeling of being watched lingered, a haunting reminder that some places are best left unexplored, and that there are dark corners of the world where the boundaries between reality and nightmare blur, and the unknown waits to claim those who dare to venture too close. It was a moonless night when I found myself driving along a desolate stretch of highway, surrounded by an ocean of darkness. The relentless hum of my engine was the only company I had on this long, solitary journey. Hours of driving had taken their toll, and I decided to pull into a remote rest stop to stretch my legs and take a break from the monotonous road. The rest stop seemed ordinary at first glance, a few dimly lit parking spaces, a weathered sign marking the facilities, and the distant glow of highway lights. As I parked my car and stepped out into the brisk night air, I couldn't shake the eerie feeling that this place was different from the usual rest stops I had encountered on my travels. I headed towards the small building that housed the restrooms, a sense of unease creeping over me. The flickering overhead lights cast long, distorted shadows on the pavement, and the air was thick with an unsettling silence. Inside, the restroom was dimly lit, and the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The tiled walls were covered in layers of graffiti, a chaotic collage of names, crude drawings, and cryptic messages. I chose an empty stall, feeling a chill run down my spine as I noticed the unsettling graffiti etched into the door. "Beware the whispers in the night," one message read, its words scratched into the metal with an almost desperate urgency. Another message simply stated, "Turn back now, stranger." My unease deepened, and I couldn't help but wonder who had left these ominous warnings and what they meant. As I was lost in thought, I heard a faint whisper, a soft, almost inaudible voice that seemed to come from nowhere. I strained to listen, my heart racing, but the words were indecipherable, like a conversation taking place in a distant room. I dismissed it as a trick of the mind, a product of my weariness. Leaving the restroom, I encountered a man standing near the vending machines in the rest stop's dimly lit lobby. He was of average height, dressed in a long, dark coat that seemed out of place in the warm night. His face was hidden beneath the shadow of a wide-brimmed hat, and he exuded an air of mystery that was hard to ignore. I approached the vending machines, feeling the weight of the stranger's gaze on me. He spoke in a low, raspy voice, his words measured and deliberate. "You're traveling through the night, aren't you?" he asked, his tone laced with an unsettling familiarity. I nodded, suddenly on edge. "Yeah, just trying to make some miles." The stranger's lips curled into a knowing smile, revealing a set of yellowed teeth. "You know, the night holds its own secrets," he said cryptically. Darkness has a way of revealing the hidden truths that remain concealed in the light. His words sent a chill down my spine, and I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. I decided to make a hasty exit and return to my car, eager to put some distance between myself and this enigmatic stranger. As I settled back into the driver's seat, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of unseen eyes following my every move. The night had grown colder, and the air felt heavy with an oppressive presence that seemed to seep into my very soul. I decided to listen to some music, hoping to drown out the sense of unease that had settled over me. But as I turned on the car radio, the speakers emitted a series of discordant, static-filled noises that sent a jolt of fear through me. It was as though the very airwaves themselves had become tainted by the sinister atmosphere of the rest stop. I quickly turned off the radio, my heart pounding, and glanced at my phone to check the time. It was then that I noticed something unsettling. The screen displayed a series of numbers and letters that made no sense, a cryptic code that seemed to defy explanation. The sense of claustrophobia and dread intensified with every passing second, squeezing my chest in a vice-like grip. The rest stop, once a fleeting refuge from the lonely highway, had transformed into a suffocating nightmare, where the ordinary boundaries of reality no longer held sway. It was as though the very air had thickened with malevolence, and I was trapped within its oppressive embrace. Every flicker of the overhead lights sent shivers down my spine, casting elongated and sinister shadows that seemed to dance and writhe on the walls. It was a silence that seemed to stretch on forever, punctuated by the echoing footsteps of unseen visitors. The walls felt like they were closing in, the ceiling descending to meet the floor, and the very ground beneath my feet seemed to shift and writhe with unseen malice. I stumbled back from the restroom door, my breath coming in ragged gasps, and made my way to the exit. As I got into my car and pulled away from the rest stop, the sense of dread still clung to me like a second skin. As I turned the key in the ignition, the engine refused to start. Panic surged through me as I tried again and again, but the car remained stubbornly silent. It was as though the very machinery had succumbed to the malevolent influence of the rest stop. I was trapped, a prisoner in this desolate place, with no means of escape. The night seemed to stretch on endlessly, the shadows growing longer and more menacing. The restroom graffiti and the stranger's cryptic words echoed in my mind, and I couldn't help but wonder if I had stumbled into something beyond my comprehension. I considered seeking help from the rest stop small office, but the idea of returning to that dimly lit building filled me with dread. The restroom's graffiti had taken on a sinister significance, and the whispering voices that had haunted me there still echoed in my memory. As I sat in my immobilized car, the sense of being watched grew stronger, as though unseen eyes were closing in on me. The rest stop had become a suffocating prison, a place where reality itself had fractured, and the boundaries between the known and the unknown had blurred into a nightmarish tapestry of fear. Hours passed, though it felt like an eternity, and the night seemed to stretch on without end. I had become a reluctant resident of this sinister rest stop, a captive audience to its malevolent mysteries. Just when I had resigned myself to my fate, a faint glimmer of light appeared on the horizon, a pale, pre-dawn glow that promised the end of this waking nightmare. With a final, desperate turn of the key, my car roared to life, and I sped away from the rest stop, leaving it behind in the rearview mirror. The sense of dread and unease clung to me like a shadow, but I was free from the rest stop's suffocating grip. As the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, I couldn't help but wonder about the secrets that lay hidden within that desolate place, secrets that defied explanation and left an indelible mark on my soul. The night had been a descent into the unknown, a journey into the heart of fear itself, and the memory of that forsaken rest stop would haunt me for the rest of my days. Some places are best left unexplored, their mysteries left to the darkness, and I had learned that lesson the hard way on that fateful night. It had been a long and tiresome journey, one that had begun with the setting sun and now stretched deep into the inky blackness of the night. I found myself driving on an unfamiliar highway, a seemingly endless stretch of road that defied explanation. The minutes turned into hours, and the hours turned into a seemingly endless night, but no matter how far I drove, there was no sign of an exit, no glimpse of civilization on the horizon. The highway was like a nightmarish labyrinth, its twists and turns leading me further into an unknown abyss. I couldn't even recall how I had ended up on this desolate road, its asphalt seemingly untouched by the passage of time. Panic gnawed at the edges of my consciousness as I desperately searched for any sign of escape. The radio in my car had long ceased to provide solace, its broadcasts transformed into a disturbing symphony of static and disjointed voices. Words and phrases that made no sense tumbled from the speakers, a cacophony of confusion that added to my growing sense of unease. I reached for my phone, hoping to rely on its GPS for guidance, but it too had succumbed to the eerie malaise that had enveloped the highway. The screen displayed a blank, featureless expanse of darkness, as though the very device itself had lost its way in this nightmarish realm. Exhaustion weighed heavily on me, both physical and mental, as I continued to navigate the never-ending highway. The relentless monotony of the road was broken only by the occasional flicker of distant headlights, like ghostly beacons in the night. But as I tried to approach them, they always seemed to recede, slipping away like elusive specters. The sense of isolation was suffocating, and the paranoia that had taken hold of me grew with each passing mile. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that unseen eyes were tracking my every move from the shadows beyond the reach of my headlights. My thoughts turned to the possibility of an accident or a breakdown, but I couldn't bring myself to stop on this forsaken highway. The fear of becoming trapped in this never-ending loop was a powerful motivator, and I pressed on, my grip on the steering wheel white-knuckled. As the night wore on, I tried to rationalize my predicament, to find a logical explanation for the highway's unending nature. Perhaps I had taken a wrong turn somewhere, or maybe there was a malfunction in the road signage. But the complete absence of any markers, signs, or exits defied all reason. The radio continued to broadcast its disjointed messages, and I strained to make sense of the voices that emerged from the static. They spoke of things I couldn't comprehend, of places that didn't exist, of events that defied the laws of nature, and of a highway that led to nowhere. It was as though the very airwaves themselves had been contaminated by the malevolent influence of this desolate road. Exhaustion began to take its toll, and my eyelids grew heavy with weariness. The relentless monotony of the highway seemed to stretch on infinitely, and my thoughts became disjointed and fragmented. I couldn't remember where I had started this journey or even where I was headed. It was as though the highway had erased all traces of my previous life, leaving me adrift in a nightmarish limbo. As I continued to drive, the line between wakefulness and dream blurred, and I couldn't discern whether I was truly awake or trapped in some twisted nightmare. The highway had become a prison, an unyielding loop from which there was no escape. I tried to call for help, dialing 911 on my phone in a desperate bid to escape this endless nightmare. But the call wouldn't connect, and a dissonant voice on the other end of the line uttered cryptic warnings and nonsensical phrases. The terror that had taken hold of me reached its peak, and I could feel my sanity slipping away like grains of sand through my fingers. The highway had become a nightmarish purgatory, a place where the laws of reality no longer applied, and I was its unwilling prisoner. As I drove deeper into the heart of this endless highway, a sense of claustrophobia and dread closed in around me. The darkness outside my car was suffocating, an inky void that seemed to swallow the world whole. I strained my eyes to pierce the night, but there was no horizon, no point of reference, only an unending expanse of obscurity. I fumbled for the car's interior light, hoping to find some solace in its feeble glow. But when I flicked the switch, the light remained stubbornly dim, casting eerie shadows that danced on the periphery of my vision. It was as though the very darkness had seeped inside the car, infecting its very essence. With each passing mile, the fear that had taken hold of me grew more potent, more oppressive. The highway was like a never-ending tunnel of despair, and I was its solitary traveler, lost in the abyss. The world outside my car had become a malevolent void, a place where the rules of reality no longer applied. I couldn't escape the feeling that I was teetering on the precipice of some unspeakable horror, that the darkness outside held secrets too dreadful to contemplate. The highway had become a living nightmare, fear and uncertainty reigned supreme. My breath quickened, and my hands trembled on the steering wheel as I continued to drive through this nightmarish void. I was no longer sure if I was driving through the night or if the night was driving through me, consuming me with its unending emptiness. The highway had become an inescapable loop, a Mobius strip of despair from which there was no return. And as the hours turned into an eternity, I couldn't help but wonder if I would ever find my way back to the world I had known, if I would ever escape this never-ending highway and the relentless nightmare it had become. The highway had become my reality, my prison, my tormentor, and I was its captive, lost in a night that had no end. Now, before we come back with brand new episodes for you, do subscribe to our channel Horror Talker. And share it with your friends and family. Until next time, stay awake and stay alert, because you never know.